The Power Ranger fans are some of the most loyal fans I've ever seen. I mean, I cannot believe 20 years later that people are still so fascinated by the show.
Amazing. Whatever we gave to them, they give back to us. Or at least they give back to me tenfold when I meet them.
We early on realized that our success was entirely based on the fact that we had very passionate fans.
I have fans that come and train here at my jiu-jitsu academy and stuff.
The fans are phenomenal. Power Ranger fans are the best because they're diehard. Being a Power Ranger fan never goes away.
Our fans are awesome. Some of them are still fans that show up who I've now known for 20 years.
Now it's like, hey, on Facebook, I friend all my fans. I'll answer their questions and stuff like that.
If I had to describe the fans, first I'd say we were surprised that they were as young as they were. But then we were so pleased at how dedicated they were.
A week after it premiered, the initial ratings came, and they were to the point where we were kind of shaking our heads. A month later, we were the #1 show across the board for all kids. 2 months later, we were on the cover of TV Guide.
And 20 years later, fans still love the show so much, there's an entirely fan-run convention called Power Morphicon.
Well, for me, Power Rangers has always been a big part of my life. I grew up watching it. Ever since I was a little kid, I was hooked, absolutely hooked on that first episode I ever saw.
I was really big into Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, dinosaurs, and Transformers.
Kids really loved dinosaurs back then.
So I see this commercial for something with teenagers turning into dinosaurs that are also giant robots, and they all use karate. So there was no question I was going to be hooked.
They're really relatable to a degree. They're teenagers, they go to school just like we do, yet they have this whole other life that they lead.
That was actually my cell phone. Like all the fans, we all have like the communicator beep for our ringtones on our phone. So like when we go to conventions, we'll hear that sound like 50 million times.
So many people grew up with Power Rangers as a part of their background that they are fans by default, whether they want to or not. We are a part of their lives.
Well, for me personally, I love the action. The action is what defined it, and along with the adventure and the comedy, PR made for a very good show.
So one day I'm flipping through the channels and I see part 2 of The Wedding. And I missed part 1. So I'm like, Rita's back. Rita and Zed are married. That's it. I'm never missing another episode of this.
People talk about Power Rangers as being science fantasy, and people look at how the show can do basically any genre it wants to, depending on the season. And I think nowhere is that more clear than the first season of the show. You've got the alien wizards, you've got the dinosaurs, you got the giant robots, you have alternate dimensions. I mean, the first season literally does every stock science fiction, fantasy genre story, except for time travel and alternate universes. And season 2 does time travel 4 times. I don't think you could set a better template for everything the show does successively unless you did something as ambitious as that first season, because it does everything you could possibly want in a kid's show. And then you got Tommy. I don't think the show would have gone more than 40 episodes without Tommy. Green Ranger Mania drove this show.
I originally was hired for like 5 to 10 episodes on Power Rangers. And, Tommy, again, was the good guy, then he was the bad guy, then the Green Ranger lost his powers. When I lost the powers, really, everyone kind of freaked out. They contacted the network and was like, hey, we got to bring the Green Ranger back. Literally, parents were calling, saying that their kids are not going to eat if the Green Ranger don't come back.
My earliest memory of the show had to be when the Green Ranger came on the scene, and it was the first episode where the team didn't win in the end. It was a to be continued, and the Green Ranger was kicking their butt for 5 parts, and it wasn't until the very end that they finally win. So I just remember standing over my brother, not knowing what he was going to do next, not knowing how the Rangers were going to come back from this, and at the same time still liking the Green Ranger, like wishing he was a part of the team. And at the end of the 5-part saga, he became a part of the team, so he instantly became my favorite Ranger, and it's something I'll never forget.
So I think what I brought to the role was, being humble, being likable, being at first kind of a loner. So I think kids identified with that. Some of the kids out there that maybe didn't have friends at the time, I pretty much was the new guy in town, and I had to make friends. So I think a lot of people could relate to that, and that's why my character became so popular.
He's introduced on the thinnest pretext imaginable. Hi, I'm the new kid. And then he's hurt terribly, granted by an alien witch, but he's still hurt and rejected. And he spends most of that first season pretty much repenting for what had been done to him.
Tommy is my number one.
We've changed a lot of people's lives. I hear that a lot.
He got me to work out, be strong, just change. Now I'm one away from black belt. I'm a crazy fighter.
Every kid out there had at least one ranger that they related to.
You know what the crazy thing is, when we were on the television show, you didn't know how impactful the show was on fans because you're working, 12 to 15 hour days, you go home, go to sleep, and then you go back to work.
There's a soulfulness and a real sweetness about the Power Rangers fans. And in particular, people that love Bulk and Skull. I got a Facebook message from a fan that said, 3 reasons I should get back from Afghanistan alive. My favorite restaurant, my wife, and to meet Paul Schreier and Jason Darby at the next convention. That's heavy. That's heavy. You're a part of someone's life who is doing important things.
They're like, you changed my life, you were my idol, you were the person that, you're a girl that looked like me. I've never seen a girl like you on TV. You were a superhero. I mean, it's so many different emotions. And at that moment you go, wow, it's different when you're a kid, and it's different when they look up to you and they kind of grow up with you.
There was something that Royce Heron said at PowerRangers a few years ago that's really stuck with me about the show's success, and her thought was that it wasn't just that they were role models for kids in the costumes, that the kids were basically upstanding citizens on the show, that the Rangers were giving back to their community, they were doing recycling drives, they were doing charity, everything. They were teaching kids martial arts. The show really was like civics class for kids. It was teaching you being a good citizen doesn't require you put on stupid outfits or drive around in giant robots. It was just telling you, give back to your community. That makes you as close to a Power Ranger as you can be. I think there's something really beautiful about that, and I don't think you get that out of a lot of superhero programs.
Because I went to a boxing match, and this big, huge bouncer standing there, he's like, hey man, you're the Power Ranger. And I'm like, wow, that's cool, you got kids? He's like, no man, I'm watching myself. I'm like, wow, okay, well that's interesting. I'm like, okay, I wouldn't expect it. He's like 32, a Power Ranger fan, but it's the martial arts. It pulled everybody in. There were so many people that watched it for the martial arts aspect of it, because people grew up watching Bruce Lee and various other people that were exciting to them as martial artists. And now here you had teenagers, kids that were martial artists, and we're doing positive things.
We hooked up with Dare America in order to be ambassadors against drugs for kids. And as part of that, we did an appearance at the first live appearance of the Power Rangers at the Universal Amphitheater.
How do you guys feel about female superheroes out there?
Jason Darby and I coming out on stage at the Universal Amphitheater when we shut down the freeways around Los Angeles, and having our breath taken away by a sea of flashbulbs going off.
They performed 2 shows at the Universal Amphitheater. They closed the freeway because it was just havoc. It was like, I don't know, going to see the Beatles or something.
It was like the Beatles.
They had closed down this major theme park in Los Angeles and shut down the freeways, which was the headline that went out on national news that night.
As I got older,